Ada sat by the window of her new room, legs folded beneath her as she stared blankly at the children playing on the street below. It had been 3 weeks since her mother rescued her from Aunt Chioma's house, but the wounds, though no longer visible, still clung to her like a second skin. Every sudden sound made her jump. Every knock on the door sent her heart racing. She couldn't even bring herself to eat in the same room with others without flinching at the clatter of plates. Amaka noticed everything. She had taken time off work to be fully present for her daughter, cancelling meetings, postponing contracts, and declining trips. Watching Ada, her own daughter whom she once thought was strong and bubbly, now withering silently before her, broke her heart more than words could say. The guilt was a daily visitor. Though she had saved Ada, the fact that her child went through all that pain without her physical presence haunted her. One morning, after Ada had another sleepless night filled with screams and tears, Amaka decided it was time. She gently entered Ada's room, crouched beside her bed, and took her hand. "My baby, I know you're hurting," she said softly. "I know it's hard, but I promise you I'm here now, and I'll never leave you again." Ada didn't respond. She just turned her face to the wall and let silent tears stream down. The next day, Amaka took her to a child therapist in Lekki. The clinic was calm, decorated with paintings of rainbows and cartoon characters. At first, Ada was stiff, unwilling to speak. But the therapist, Dr. Ifeoma, didn't push. She just let Ada draw. Each session began with drawings. First, it was a picture of a house with a sad stick figure inside. Then it was an angry face. Then a woman shouting with red marks drawn around her mouth. Slowly, over the next few sessions, Ada began to talk. "She always called me useless," Ada whispered one day. "She said I was a burden." Dr. Ifeoma nodded gently, listening without interrupting. She guided Ada through her emotions, teaching her how to name what she was feeling. Fear, shame, anger, confusion. All the things Ada couldn't explain before began to take form. Meanwhile, Amaka enrolled Ada in a new private school nearby. It was a mid-sized school with friendly teachers and small class sizes. She made sure they had a dedicated guidance counselor and a strong support system. On her first day, Ada clutched her mother's hand tightly at the gate. "You can sit at the back of the class for today if you want," her new teacher, Miss Lara, offered kindly. Amaka nodded, grateful. She stayed in the back as Ada slowly settled into the new environment. She didn't talk much. She didn't smile either. But at least she didn't cry. That was progress. At home, Ada's healing journey continued. Therapy became routine, every Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes they did breathing exercises together. Other times, they just painted or played memory games. Gradually, the nightmares reduced. Ada even started eating again, though she still avoided the kitchen. One evening, after a long therapy session, Dr. Ifeoma gently approached Amaka in the waiting room. "She's improving, slowly but surely," she said. "But I want to suggest something. Ada has a powerful story, and sometimes healing comes faster when we give our pain purpose." Amaka frowned. "You mean, talk about it, publicly?" "Only with her consent," Dr. Ifeoma replied. "We live in a world where too many children suffer in silence. But if she's willing to share, it could help both her and others." Amaka was hesitant. The last thing she wanted was to expose her daughter's pain to the world. But that night, she brought it up gently. "Ada, Dr. Ifeoma said something today. She said, maybe if you want, you could help others by sharing your story, but only if you're ready." Ada was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "If I tell people, maybe other children like me won't feel so alone." Tears welled in Amaka's eyes. She nodded and hugged her daughter tightly. The following week, Amaka reached out to a trusted media friend who ran a platform on Instagram focused on real-life stories. They scheduled a sit-down video, just Amaka and Ada, side by side on a couch in their living room. No fancy makeup, no scripts, just truth. The video started with Amaka narrating how she had left Ada in the care of her older sister, thinking she was making the right decision. She spoke about the hidden camera, the nights spent watching helplessly as her daughter was mistreated, and the guilt she still carried. Then Ada, holding her mother's hand, spoke. She told me I was useless, that I should be grateful for sleeping on the floor. She locked the fridge and told me real children deserved food. Her voice shook, but she didn't cry. She kept speaking. I thought I did something wrong. I thought maybe Mummy left me because I was bad. Amaka broke down at that point. She turned to Ada and said, "No, baby, you were never the problem. I was wrong to leave you. I should have known." The video was raw, emotional, and completely unscripted. When it went live on Instagram and TikTok, it quickly gained traction. Within hours, it had over 100,000 views. By the next day, blogs were reposting it, celebrities commented, NGOs reached out, people were moved. Some sharing their own childhood abuse stories in the comments sections. Amaka was overwhelmed. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages poured in, some praising her for her strength, and others criticizing her for exposing her child online. But one thing was clear. Ada's voice had made an impact. Back at school, things changed too. Her teacher, Miss Lara, said a few of her classmates had seen the video with their parents. They began treating Ada differently, not with pity, but with respect. One girl, Kemi, approached Ada during lunch. "My uncle used to beat me," she whispered, "but I never told anyone until I saw your video." Ada looked at her and simply said, "You're not alone." That was the beginning of a new friendship. The two girls bonded quickly, drawn together by shared pain and the courage to face it. Kemi would sit with Ada during break, and they even started joining the school's creative writing club. Meanwhile, Amaka began partnering with NGOs focused on child rights and mental health. She started attending events and workshops, speaking about the signs of silent abuse and the importance of listening to children. She made it clear that the goal wasn't fame, it was justice, awareness, and healing. She launched a hashtag campaign, #NotEverySmileIsSafe. It went viral. People began sharing their own stories under the tag. Amaka organized virtual town halls and community webinars where survivors spoke. Ada was sometimes present, but mostly stayed behind the scenes. She had done her part, and now she needed space to just be a child again. But healing is never linear. There were still days Ada would have nightmares, still moments where loud voices triggered her. But there were also brighter days, days filled with laughter, days filled with dance, with painting, with her and Kemi making TikToks together. And in those moments, Amaka would look at her daughter and feel both pain and pride. Pain for what was lost, pride for what they were rebuilding. Ada wasn't just surviving anymore, she was beginning to live. The moment Amaka posted the video, she knew things would never be the same again. At first, it was a few likes, a handful of comments, people expressing shock and sympathy. But within hours, the video exploded. Influencers reposted it. Advocacy pages shared it. By the next morning, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The video had crossed 500,000 views on Instagram and was trending on TikTok under the hashtag #NotEverySmileIsSafe. People from different parts of Nigeria and even outside the country flooded the comments. Many praised her courage, calling her a mother lion for standing up for her child and exposing abuse, no matter how close to home it came. Others shared similar stories, recounting how they were also abused by uncles, aunties, cousins, family members trusted to care for them. But not all the reactions were supportive. One comment read, "So now it's clout chasing with your own child's trauma? How low can you go?" Another said, "Why record your sister secretly and post it for the world? Family matters should stay in the family." Amaka ignored them at first, choosing to focus on the love pouring in. But then, the phone calls started. First from cousins she hadn't spoken to in years. "Amaka, you don't have shame. You let the whole world see your sister in handcuffs? What happened to handling things privately?" Kioma was wrong, yes, but why destroy the family's name like this? An uncle even called to accuse her of ruining their lineage's reputation. Amaka listened silently to each call, her fingers clenched tightly around her phone. When one auntie shouted that Kioma had only disciplined the girl the way she saw fit, Amaka lost her temper. Starving a child and calling her useless every day is not discipline, it's abuse, she shouted before ending the call. She tried not to let the backlash get to her, but it wasn't easy. What hurt the most was that none of those people had ever called to ask how Ada was when she was missing school or looking sickly. They hadn't cared when she was locked in a room with no food, but now that she had spoken out, they suddenly had voices. Ada, on the other hand, was doing her best to navigate the sudden attention. At school, more students approached her, some with kind words, some with awkward stares. But one girl stood out. Her name was Zara. She walked up to Ada during break time and sat quietly beside her. "I watched your video," Zara said softly. "My cousin used to touch me at night when I was 10. I told my mum once, but she told me not to disgrace the family." Ada looked at her, eyes wide with shock. Zara nodded slowly, tears forming. "You're brave," she continued. "I wish I had someone like your mum." From that day on, Zara and Ada became inseparable. They sat together during lunch, walked to the school gate together, and even did homework over video calls. For the first time in a long while, Ada smiled more often. She didn't feel so alone anymore. Meanwhile, the video had caught the attention of a prominent NGO in Lagos focused on child protection and mental health awareness. The founder, a woman named Mrs. Ine, reached out to Amaka via DM and then followed up with an email. They scheduled a meeting at the NGO's Victoria Island office. Amaka arrived with Ada, not sure what to expect. The space was warm and colourful, decorated with artwork from children who had passed through their rehabilitation programs. Mrs. Ine, a warm woman in her early 50s, welcomed them with open arms. "Your video is powerful," she said. "You've started a conversation that too many people are afraid to have. We want to help." She offered a full scholarship for Ada, covering her school fees, books, uniforms and therapy for the next 5 years. In addition, they offered Amaka a role as an ambassador for the NGO's new awareness campaign. They would cover transportation for events, provide media training, and support her content on social media. Amaka was overwhelmed. She thanked them over and over, hugging her daughter tightly after they left the building. "This is God, Ada. This is what happens when truth is louder than fear." But the online storm hadn't died down. Some people continued to dig into her family, posting old photos of Kioma, debating her personality, and speculating on her sentence. Amaka started receiving anonymous threats in her inbox, warnings to take the video down or face consequences. She didn't budge. Instead, she released another short clip, calmly explaining why she chose to make the video public. "Too many children are suffering behind closed doors," she said. "And too many adults are silent because of fear, shame, or culture. If even one child is rescued because of our story, then it was worth it." That video only made the story spread further. She was invited to a morning TV show to talk about modern child abuse in Nigerian homes. This time, she went alone, protecting Ada's peace. She wore a simple Ankara dress, sat under the studio lights and told the nation what many were too afraid to admit. Abuse is not discipline, silence is not protection, and family ties should never excuse cruelty. She left the studio to hundreds of new messages. Women reached out, some with stories from childhood they had never told anyone. Men messaged her too, recounting how their cries were ignored as boys because men don't cry. The story wasn't just about Ada anymore. It had become a mirror for society. Ada's school noticed the shift too. Her principal called Amaka in for a meeting, not to complain but to commend. The school wanted to host a mini awareness event and hoped Ada and Amaka would speak to the students. Amaka agreed but insisted that Ada would only participate if she felt ready. Ada, after much thought, decided to say a few words. On the day of the event, she stood on the school podium, hands slightly trembling, but her voice steady. I thought I was alone. I thought maybe I deserved what happened to me, but I now know it wasn't my fault. And if something is happening to you, please speak up. Tell someone, you don't have to be afraid. The applause that followed was thunderous. Ada smiled, really smiled. For the first time in a long time, she stood tall, not as a victim, but as a girl reclaiming her voice. At home, Amaka printed out a screenshot of the video at 1 million views and framed it, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of how far they had come. But they knew it wasn't over. Healing was a journey. Rebuilding trust was a process. There were still nights Ada would wake up crying, still moments Amaka would sit in the living room thinking of how easily she could have lost her child. But through it all, they had found purpose. Ada was not just healing, she was helping others heal. And Amaka, once just a single mother trying to do her best, had become a symbol of what it means to protect, to fight, and to love fearlessly. The public may have had mixed feelings, but inside their home, peace was returning. And that peace, no matter how long it had taken, was worth everything. Amaka was in the kitchen making breakfast one Saturday morning when her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unfamiliar number. She opened it cautiously. It was from Kioma. Amaka, please, I've had time to think. I was misunderstood. I didn't mean to hurt Ada like that. I'm begging you as your sister, find it in your heart to forgive me. Let me explain. Please. Amaka stared at the message for a long time, her hands trembling slightly. A surge of old anger rushed to her chest, but before she could even lock her phone, Ada walked in and caught a glimpse of the message. She didn't say a word at first, but Amaka could see her daughter's expression change. Eyes wide, face pale. Ada dropped the spoon she was holding. She wants to talk to you. Ada's voice was barely above a whisper. After everything she did? Amaka moved to comfort her, but Ada took a step back. Her lips trembled as she spoke again, this time louder. Why is she even allowed to contact you? Why does she still get to speak while I'm still having nightmares? Ada ran to her room, slammed the door and burst into tears. Amaka stood in the kitchen, heartbroken, torn between responding to her sister and protecting the delicate healing her daughter had started. Later that week, Amaka received a letter from the legal department handling Kioma's case. The court had arranged a mediation session, part of the process before final sentencing. Kioma had requested to speak directly to Amaka and Ada, supervised, recorded, and with legal representatives present. Though it wasn't mandatory, the court encouraged it for potential emotional closure. Amaka debated it for days. She discussed it with Ada's therapist first, unsure whether her daughter was strong enough to face her abuser. But surprisingly, Ada agreed to go. I don't know if I can forgive her, Ada said one evening while sitting on her bed, knees drawn up. But I think I need to look her in the eye and tell her what she did to me. The mediation room was cold, sterile, with metal chairs and a large round table. A judge's assistant, a legal mediator, and a social worker sat in the corners of the room. Kioma was led in wearing a beige prison uniform, handcuffed but without the usual defiance in her eyes. She looked older, thinner. Her face was tear-streaked and full of regret as she saw Ada. She started to speak, but Amaka raised her hand. "No excuses," she said calmly. "Let Ada talk." Ada stood up slowly. Her hands shook, but her voice was clear. "You told me I was worthless," she began. "You made me clean while your children played. You locked the fridge. You said I should thank God you gave me shelter." Kioma sobbed, but Ada continued. "I thought something was wrong with me. I believed it for a long time, but now I know better. I didn't deserve any of it." Chioma tried to interject. "Ada, I was going through a lot then." Amaka stood, her voice firm. "Going through a lot doesn't justify abuse. You had help if you needed it. You chose cruelty." Kioma broke down, begging. "I've lost everything, Amaka. My job, my home, my children don't even want to talk to me. I'm sorry. I really am." Amaka looked her dead in the eye. "You didn't just lose those things. You gave them away. With every slap, every insult, every plate of food you denied her, that was your choice." The session ended without hugs or reconciliation. The mediator thanked them both for attending, and the final court hearing was set for the following week. When Judgment Day came, Amaka and Ada sat quietly in the back row of the courtroom. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice, read through the case file. Child abuse, emotional trauma, starvation, unlawful withdrawal from school, she listed. All proven with visual evidence and medical records. Kioma's lawyer tried to argue for bail and a reduced sentence, citing mental strain and family complications. But the judge was unmoved. This case reflects a deeper cultural issue, the normalization of child abuse within family structures. This court intends to set an example. Kioma was sentenced to 7 years in prison with no option of a fine. Additionally, her 2 properties were to be liquidated and the proceeds placed in a trust for Ada's continued education and psychological support. As the judge struck her gavel, Kioma looked over at Amaka and Ada with tearful eyes. But neither mother nor daughter returned the gaze. Outside the courtroom, Ada stood in the sunlight for a long time, breathing deeply. Amaka wrapped an arm around her. "It's over," she whispered. "No," Ada replied softly. "It's just beginning." Weeks later, during a school event themed Voices of Courage, Ada was invited to speak. She stood in front of her classmates, teachers, and visiting parents. "My name is Ada," she began. "Some of you know a bit about my story. I was hurt by someone I trusted. But I'm not here today as a victim. I'm here because I survived." The room was silent, every ear hanging on her every word. "I've learned that speaking out isn't weakness, it's strength. And if you're going through something, if someone is hurting you, please don't stay silent. Your voice matters. Your life matters." The applause that followed was thunderous. Tears streamed down Amaka's face as she clapped harder than anyone in the hall. Ada walked off the stage into her mother's arms. There were no more chains holding her down, no more secrets, no more shame, just truth, healing, and the power of speaking up. And finally, peace.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more teachable and inspiring tales by CJ.